Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're doing a deep dive into some fascinating insights from Greg Elkan's devotional, Elkan's Word for Today. Specifically, we're looking at a series called Lessons from Manasseh.
That's right. Greg Elkan draws on quite a few biblical accounts, and he highlights this recurring pattern, firstborn sons who, well, for different reasons, didn't end up receiving the blessings that you'd normally expect based on their birth position.
Okay.
But Manasseh, who is Joseph's firstborn, he really stands out. And his story, as Greg explains it, holds some pretty powerful lessons for us today. Lessons about perspective, about acceptance.
So our mission here in this deep dive is really to unpack Greg Elkan's analysis of Manasseh's story. We want to look at how his reaction was so different from some other key figures in the Bible. And, what that difference can teach you about recognizing your own blessings. And maybe trusting the bigger picture, even when things don't quite look like you thought they would.
Exactly. We'll be focusing specifically on Greg Elkan's insights, what Manasseh's story teaches us about life, but also about humility. Let's get into it.
Okay, so Greg Elkan kicks off his Lessons from Manasseh by pointing out this pattern you mentioned. He lists some pretty well-known firstborns who didn't get the expected inheritance, like Cain, Ishmael, Esau, Reuben, and then Manasseh. It's quite a list he puts together.
It is, yeah. And Elkan notes that in some cases, like Cain and Reuben, their loss was pretty clearly due to their own actions, their own wrongdoing.
Right, their choices mattered.
Definitely. But then he highlights cases like Ishmael and Esau. These were firstborns who were denied their sort of rightful blessing through really no fault of their own. Like Abraham, he actually begged God for Ishmael to be the heir. But God specifically said no, Isaac would be the son of the promise. That's back in Genesis.
And Esau's situation is maybe even more striking, isn't it? Yeah. Greg Elkan really emphasizes this. He cites Romans, saying his displacement happened before the boys had done anything good or bad.
Exactly.
That really hammers home this idea of like an election, a choice that wasn't based on merit or works at all.
Precisely. Elkan emphasizes that God's gift is, and I'm quoting here loosely from Romans again, not a question of human will and human effort, but of God's mercy. But Manasseh, for Greg Elkan, he's the really crucial one among these skip to firstborns, because his reaction, as Elkan puts it, has a lot to teach us about life, about humility, and about the blessing of submitting to the will of God in everything.
Okay, so what made Manasseh so different then? Greg Elkan really seems to drive this home by contrasting Manasseh's reaction to being seemingly demoted with how others reacted.
Right. The default reaction, as Elkan describes it, often seemed to be aggression towards the younger sibling who got the blessing.
Like Cain and Abel.
Exactly. Cain killed Abel. Joseph's older brothers, feeling displaced because of their father's favoritism, they wanted to get rid of Joseph entirely.
Yeah, threw him in a pit.
Right. And Ishmael apparently acted maliciously towards Isaac. Even Jacob himself, who actually was the valid heir in God's plan, he still had to flee from Esau's anger.
Wow, that's a pretty stark pattern of conflict. So what did Manasseh do when his grandfather Jacob deliberately crossed his hands, putting his right hand on the younger brother Ephraim, prophetically elevating him? What was Manasseh's response?
Well, this is where Greg Elkan's analysis gets really, really insightful. He notes that Manasseh, quote, never uttered a word of protest and never attempted any form of harm against his brother afterwards.
Nothing.
Nothing recorded. Elkan believes Manasseh somehow read between the lines of Jacob's declaration. As Greg explains it, Jacob was basically saying two things at the same time. You can see this in Genesis 48. Statement number 1, Manasseh's younger brother, Ephraim, is going to be greater than him. But statement number 2, Manasseh himself is also going to be great.
Okay, so the key difference, according to Elkan, is focus. Ishmael, Esau, Joseph's brothers. They zeroed in on that first statement, what the other guy was getting, what they felt they were losing.
Exactly.
But Manasseh focused on the second statement, the promise directed at him. Manasseh is going to be great.
Yes, precisely. Elkan highlights this contrast. Ishmael was promised greatness. God told Hagar his descendants would be numerous, but his eyes were stuck on Isaac's specific blessing. Esau was prophesied to become a nation, a people, but his obsession with Jacob, with what Jacob got, it blinded him. And Jacob's other sons, they were all part of the Abrahamic promise. They were blessed. But their envy of Joseph just consumed them. So Greg Elkan's takeaway for you, the listener, is really powerful here. He says, essentially, your brother or sister's blessing is not an indicator of where you stand before God.
That's a good point.
God has the prerogative to lift anyone up. Don't interpret that action to mean that he's putting you down. You're just as blessed as anyone. Look up and receive yours today.
That idea of perspective, it seems to be a major thread Greg Elkan pulls throughout this devotional series. He points out something interesting lots of people know about Ishmael, Cain, Esau. Their stories are warnings. But fewer people know about Abraham's other 6 sons, the ones he had with Keturah. Why is that?
Yeah, it's a critical point Greg makes. Those more famous figures, Ishmael, Esau, Cain, they became negative examples, even referenced in the New Testament. Why? Because, as Elkan argues, they were more fixated on the blessing given to their younger brothers, and because of that fixation, they ended up soiling their reputation in scriptural history.
So their focus ruined their legacy, in a way.
That's the idea. And who's notably absent from that list of negative examples? Manasseh.
Right. Okay, so from a purely human standpoint, Manasseh, being Joseph's firstborn, you could argue he had every right to protest, couldn't you?
You could certainly argue that. But Greg Elkan reveals this brilliant piece of cultural context. Yes, Manasseh was Joseph's firstborn, but crucially, he was Jacob's grandson.
Okay.
And in ancient Near Eastern culture, typically, grandsons didn't directly receive inheritances from their grandfather in the same way sons did.
I see where you're going.
Exactly. This is a fantastic aha moment Greg Elkan brings out. When Jacob, in Genesis 48, says he's adopting Manasseh and Ephraim as his own sons.
He's elevating them.
He's catapulting Manasseh from the status of just one grandson, and Jacob had like over 60 grandsons, apparently.
Wow.
It's the status of a son, an heir.
So wait a minute. While Jacob's right hand went to Ephraim, placing Manasseh technically below his younger brother in that specific blessing. In the bigger picture, Manasseh was now elevated above all his cousins, and even above his uncles, the other sons of Jacob.
That's the implication. He basically jumps to the number 2 position within the whole Jacob clan structure, right behind Ephraim.
That completely reframes it.
Yeah.
So what looked like being pushed down was actually being lifted way up.
It totally shifts the perspective, doesn't it? And Greg Elkan sums it up perfectly. In reality, Manasseh's apparent demotion was actually a promotion.
That's amazing.
And that's Elkan's core lesson for you. Life is so much about perspective. You are often more blessed than you realize, but it requires the right perspective to actually see it. He connects this to what Jesus called the evil eye in Matthew's gospel. You know, being envious, only noticing what God is doing for others and missing what he's done for you.
Instead of focusing outward with envy, look inward or upward with gratitude.
Precisely. Elkan encourages gratitude for what Paul calls his unspeakable gift in 2 Corinthians.
So Greg Elkan keeps circling back to Manasseh's, unusual wisdom in this situation. He really bucked the trend, didn't he? No attacking the younger sibling. And Elkan points out it was actually their father, Joseph, not Manasseh himself, who initially questioned Jacob's hand placement.
That's right. Joseph protested first. And Elkan further notes that neither Manasseh nor his descendants ever tried to reassert their seniority over Ephraim down the line. Manasseh seemed wise enough to understand, as Greg Elkan puts it very effectively, that it is better to be a lesser son of Jacob than to be a senior grandson of Jacob.
That makes perfect sense when you put it that way. He understood the promotion. It makes you think, too. Greg Elkan poses this kind of thought experiment. Jacob had, 53 grandsons recorded? Can you, the listener, name any of them besides Manasseh and Ephraim? Probably not, right? Unless you're really deep into biblical genealogies.
Exactly. Most people can't, but Manasseh. His name is known, his tribe is significant, and as a kind of final testament to this, Greg Elkan shares what he calls an interesting fact. If you actually study the map of the territories allocated to the tribes of Israel after they settled in Canaan, you'll notice that a huge chunk of land, maybe about a quarter of all the land east and west of the Jordan, belongs to the tribe of Manasseh alone.
A quarter?
Seriously.
Roughly, yeah. It's a massive territory. As Elkan says, not bad for a so-called lesser tribe, is it?
Not bad at all. So the ultimate lesson from Greg Elkan here seems really clear. Be content with your blessing. Just because someone else's blessing looks bigger or maybe different, it doesn't mean God blessed you less.
Right. You are blessed with your specific blessing. Focus on that.
Wow. What an incredible deep dive using Greg Elkan's Lessons from Manasseh. It's definitely more than just an old story. It really feels like a powerful framework, a lens for how we can view our own lives, our own circumstances today. Absolutely. The core takeaway, which Greg Elkan really drives home again and again, is just the transformative power of perspective. It's huge. What might look like a demotion, a slight, from one angle, well, it could actually be a massive promotion when you see it from a different viewpoint, from God's viewpoint maybe. Manasseh made a choice. He chose to see the greatness that was promised to him, rather than just fixating on what his brother Ephraim received.
And the outcome of that choice. An enduring legacy, right? A powerful tribe, a name that's remembered for generations. And it all stems from that single choice, that moment of humility, of trust. It really reminds us, like Greg Elkan says, to always trust God's plan. He knows what he's doing.
He does. So maybe as you, our listener, reflect on this deep dive, just consider this. Is there any demotion or perceived slight, maybe something you feel you've missed out on in your own life? Could it possibly be, from another perspective, a hidden promotion, a blessing you're not fully recognizing? Maybe just because your focus, like Ishmael's or Esau's, is kind of fixed on what somebody else seems to have.
What if you shifted that focus?
Yeah. What if you, like Manasseh, deliberately shifted your focus to the greatness, the blessing, the unique calling that is also promised to you?
That is definitely a powerful thought to chew on. We really hope this deep dive into Greg Elkan's insights on Manasseh has given you maybe a fresh perspective, maybe some valuable things to think about as you go about your day.
This was an audio recording of Elkan's Word for Today, the devotional for growing believers by Greg Elkan. For more information and other edifying resources, visit us at www.gregelkan.com. That's GREGELKAN.com. You can send your comments or questions by WhatsApp or Telegram to +234 813 664 2912. God bless you.